I married Ethan and his mother. In a package deal. No returns. The church was small, provincial, smelling of incense and old candles. People crowded into the pews, smiling and taking pictures. Ethan looked calm, even a little too calm. He only trembled when he repeated his vows. His voice broke on the word accept, and he squeezed my finger. I nodded. Breathe, I'm here. Martha was sitting in the front row. Dark blue suit, cross on a chain, face like stone. She was crying, but not with joy. There was something controlled, restrained in her gaze, as if she wasn't crying, but simply allowing herself to look emotional. I had known Martha since childhood. She led a Sunday group for girls. She taught them to bake cookies for church, make cards, and pray properly. Her favorite phrase was, "Obedience is a form of love." She never yelled, but everyone listened to her. She once had a husband, Ethan's father. He left her for her best friend. She took it with dignity on the outside, but on the inside, it seems she never let it go. Since then, Ethan has been her whole world. And all the women around him are a potential threat. When the priest blessed us, Martha didn't stand up. She just clenched her handkerchief so tightly that her fingers turned white. I felt her gaze on me, cold, attentive. I smiled back because that's what she had taught me. Smile and everything will pass. At the time, I still thought she was happy for us. After the bitter, the crowd, hugs, photos, toasts, veil, flowers. Ethan laughed, winked at me, kissed me on the temple. He looked happy, truly happy. And Martha sat at her table, her back straight, her napkin perfectly folded, her glass always in the same place. People approached her, said something, thanked her. She replied briefly, politely, and then looked at us again. Calmly. Without a smile. We were already getting into the car when she approached. In her hands was a small whitewashed wooden box with carvings around the edge. "This is for you," she said. "So that the right words always come to your home." I took it. Light, empty. I smiled and thanked her. "I'll be living in the house next door for a while," she added calmly. "I'll help you sort things out and give you the keys to the storage room. Ethan's father left a mess behind. You'll see for yourselves. But we'll manage. Together. Temporarily," I repeated in my head. She leaned over and touched my cheek. "You're a good girl. Everything will be fine if you follow the rules." Ethan smiled. "She's just worried. It's her way of loving." I nodded. I knew that way. Love like care, like a checklist on the fridge. We got in the car. Ethan tossed the box in his hand. "Cute. Mom likes everything in this style." "I know," I replied. "Everything in her house is in boxes. Because it's easier to keep things organized that way," he said. "You'll get used to it." I smiled, although I wasn't sure what exactly I would have to get used to. The drive home was quiet. We drove past familiar fields and listened to the radio. I looked at Ethan, so ordinary, so calm, so mine. And I thought, it's simple. A small house, a job with his uncle, me taking classes. A dog, Sunday church, dinners together. A simple formula for life. The lights were already on at Martha's house. She stood on the porch with a pie, smiling. "Thank God you made it," she said. "I've made tea. We'll unpack tomorrow. I've made a list of things to do. Nothing complicated. A list. Of course. Our wing was neat, almost new. Fresh curtains, a clean blanket, the smell of a store. I put the box on the dresser. There was already a vase of flowers on the dresser. Someone had obviously taken care of it. At dinner, Martha explained where to store things, how often to change the filter in the boiler when the garbage truck comes. Everything was practical. But every sentence contained the right way. And I caught myself waiting for her approval even on the smallest things. Before going to bed, I washed up in someone else's bathroom. Strangers' towels, jars, everything in its place. Ethan fell asleep right away. I lay there and listened to the house. How it creaked. How someone was walking in the next room. Evenly, calmly. Probably Martha checking the doors. Her steps were confident. And for some reason that made me anxious. I got up and opened the box. It was empty. Smooth wood, the smell of varnish. "May the right words come to your home," I remembered. I closed the lid, the cross clinked softly. And for some reason I felt uneasy in this silence. Maybe it was just fatigue. I lay down next to Ethan and put my hand on his palm. The warmth returned. Tomorrow we will unpack the boxes, eat pie and begin our normal life. Before falling asleep, I remembered Martha's words. God chose you for Ethan. And I thought, what if it's not about love but about responsibility? What if it's not a blessing but an instruction? The house was quiet. Everything was in its place. And yet it seemed that someone else had already decided what our order should look like. We woke up to the smell of coffee and footsteps in the kitchen. Not ours, someone else's. Martha was already there. She was wearing a small flowered robe, perfect even at 7 in the morning. On the table was a plate of warm rolls, and next to it was a neat sheet of paper with columns. Breakfast 7:30. Prayer 8 o'clock. Unpacking boxes after 9. Ethan looked at the schedule and smiled. She hasn't changed. Everything has to be under control. I took a sip of coffee so as not to comment. When Martha returned and gently asked why we hadn't sat down yet, I realized it wasn't a question but an order. We sat down. A new home is a test, she said, setting out the jam. Everything has to be done right to keep things in order. She looked at me when she said, right. I nodded. Ethan joked, but Martha didn't laugh. When he offered to help her with the garden, she replied, no need, everything is under control. After breakfast, I unpacked boxes in our room. The shelves were lined with napkins, and everything was arranged as if we were in a museum of order. When I lifted one box, there was a note underneath it. Don't forget to turn off the lights before going to bed. The handwriting was familiar, Martin's. Ethan didn't see anything strange in this. He grew up in a world where routine is care and control is love. He was comfortable with it. But I felt a little cramped. At noon, Martha came in with a pie. She put it on the table and stood by the door. I'll be living here in the main wing for now, she said. I want to make sure you're doing everything right. It's temporary. And she immediately handed me a sheet of paper. House rules. I scanned it with my eyes. No arguing during evening prayers. Prepare clothes for church the night before. Do not watch secular shows. On Friday, read the scriptures together. Ethan laughed. Mom, we're not children. You are newlyweds, she replied evenly. And youth is not yet adulthood. She didn't raise her voice, but I felt that this wasn't a conversation, it was an instruction. I barely managed to suppress a nervous laugh. Even love was subject to her schedule. In the evening, we all had dinner together. Martha blessed the table. The prayer was long, with thanks for everything from the sun to the sugar in our tea. Ethan listened to it like a familiar melody without thinking. And I caught myself repeating the words automatically, but perceiving each one as a test. After dinner, I said to Ethan, she controls us. He smiled. She's just a mom. She's worried. It's not worry, it's a schedule. She's not angry, Milo. That's just how she is. Maybe he was right. She really wasn't angry. She didn't yell or scold. She just made the whole space breathe to her rhythm. And it seemed normal. Before going to bed, I went to the window. The lights were still on in the main wing. Martha was sitting at the table, writing something in a notebook. When she leaned closer to the lamp, I noticed another shadow flash nearby. As if someone was standing behind the door. Maybe it was a reflection. Maybe someone was helping her with her housework. I wasn't sure. Ethan was sleeping next to me, breathing evenly. I turned off the lamp and remembered her words at dinner. The lights must be turned off at exactly 10 o'clock. That way, the body rests and the soul does not stray. At 10 o'clock sharp, the light came on outside her door. She wasn't asleep. She was waiting. And then I thought for the first time. In this house, even darkness works according to her rules. On the third day after the move, I stopped feeling like we were at home. It felt like Ethan and I were renting a room in someone else's life. Everything here had its own rules. Where to put the spoon, when to be quiet, even when it was okay to rest. Martha got up earlier than everyone else. When I went into the kitchen at 7, it already smelled of baking and chlorine. She stood by the window with a pen in her hand, writing something in her notebook. Praise Jesus, Milo. How did you sleep? She asked every morning. And every time it sounded not like concern but like a test. On the table was a new sheet of paper, the schedule for the day. Morning chores, lunch, evening prayer. Next to each item was a check mark for done or remind. I wanted to laugh, but something held me back. Ethan didn't notice anything. He repaired the gate, carried boxes to the basement, and watered the garden with his mother. When I hinted that it would be nice to spend the day together, he just replied, "It's hard for Mom. She's trying her best for us." Once I came back from the store and found Martha in our bedroom. She was standing by the dresser with my phone in her hands. "Oh, I was just dusting," she said calmly. The phone was on. "It's dangerous, the battery could die." I took it silently. The messages from her friends were partially read. Some, sent from a Thanos number, were edited. The emojis were gone, replaced by phrases like "Thank you, we are fine," "God bless you." I didn't know what was worse, the fact itself or her complete confidence that it was right. That evening during prayer, Martha said, "There must be order in the family. And order begins with purity, spiritual and physical. A woman must protect her husband from temptation, from vanity, even from her own weaknesses." Ethan listened and nodded. I nodded too, but felt a chill run down my spine. This isn't about order. It's about control. After dinner, I went to the attic to find some old boxes of dishes. The air there was dry and smelled of dust and apples. Between the suitcases stood a wooden chest covered with a towel. On the lid was a small carved cross, like the one Martha gave us after our wedding. I opened it. Inside were dozens of letters, all in identical envelopes without stamps or dates. The signatures varied: Father, Sister Grace, childhood friend. The handwriting was the same. I picked up the first one I saw. "Don't hold a grudge against your mother. She is always right. God punishes disobedience." The second: "The world is a temptation. Home is a temple. Don't leave without a blessing." The third: "Don't listen to women who doubt. They destroy order." I closed the chest because I heard footsteps on the stairs, confident, familiar. I managed to cover everything with a towel. The door opened. "Are you here?" Martha asked. "Yes, I was looking for a box of dishes." "Don't bother. I've already brought everything downstairs. There are a lot of spiders up here." She stood in the doorway, the light falling on her face from below. Her eyes seemed dark, her smile almost mechanical. "Good girl," she said. "Come downstairs, dinner is at 9. When she left, I opened the chest again. Just for a second. At the bottom was a photograph. Little Ethan with a Bible in his hands. Behind him was Martha. She was looking straight into the camera. The same look I saw at the wedding. I didn't take anything, I just closed the lid. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night. Ethan was breathing peacefully beside me as always. Somewhere downstairs the mailbox clicked, short and sharp. I peeked out the window cautiously. Martha was standing by the gate with a flashlight. She was checking the mail, as if it were part of her evening ritual. And then I realized, the strange voices in this house aren't magical. They just have one address. And they all belong to her. The next morning I was the first one downstairs. The house was strangely quiet. Even the refrigerator was running cautiously, making short sounds, as if afraid of waking someone up. There was a white envelope on the table, no stamp, no signature. The handwriting was familiar. Elongated letters, a sharp slant. I opened it without even thinking. "Remember, God punishes disobedience. A woman must keep her heart quiet so as not to hear temptation." No signature. I put the letter back and pretended nothing had happened. When Ethan appeared in the kitchen, I just poured him some coffee. "Mom got up early again," he said, stretching. "She had some papers at the post office." "At the post office?" "Yeah, I think she got some letters from relatives." I smiled, but something tightened inside me. The envelope was lying here on our table. No one had come in. After breakfast, I decided to just leave the house. I grabbed my bag and my shopping list. The air outside smelled of apples and dry grass. After days of silence, it was like a breath of fresh air. But I hadn't taken more than a few steps when I heard behind me, "Where are you going, daughter?" Martha was standing by the gate with a basket in her hands. "To the store," I replied. "We're out of salt and coffee filters." "I already bought them. We have everything we need. You shouldn't go alone. The world is uncertain right now." Her voice was soft, but her tone was final. I just nodded and turned back. She stood there for a few more seconds watching me go. After lunch, Martha called me to help her in the pantry. "We need to tidy up a bit," she said, already holding the keys. The pantry turned out to be like a small chapel. Shelves labeled flour, holy water, preserves, and old icons on the wall, shiny with oil. "Every family should have a place for atonement," she said, rearranging the jars. "Ethan and I used to pray here. When your soul is rebellious, you have to kneel until peace comes." She took my hand and pressed my fingers to the cold floor. "You're a good wife, Milo. But it's not enough to be good. You have to be pure." I pulled my hand away and pretended to wipe the dust. "Yes, of course," I whispered. In the evening, Ethan noticed that I was tense. "She's just afraid of losing you," he said. "She's controlled everything her whole life, even herself. She doesn't know how to do anything else." "It's not concern," I replied. "It's control." "No," he smiled. "That's just how she is." His smile was gentle but not entirely sincere. I could see him searching for an explanation for both of us. And I almost believed him. A few days later I found another letter. This time it wasn't on the table. It was on the pillow. "Don't forget. The devil comes in the form of gentleness. He wants to separate what God has joined together." I put the envelope in my pocket so Ethan wouldn't see it. I didn't want to explain anymore. In the evening, Martha brought a bottle of holy water. She placed it next to our bed. "Sprinkle it on your pillows before you go to sleep," she said, "so that your dreams will be pure." I unscrewed the cap. The smell was sharp with a metallic taste. "Well done," she whispered when I obeyed. "The Lord loves those who listen." When the door closed, I sat in the dark for a long time. Ethan was asleep. I looked at the bottle and thought, how many more letters are there in this house? And who helps her put them there? I quietly went outside to check the mailbox. But when I opened the door, Martha was already standing on the porch, barefoot, with a flashlight in her hand. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "It's just hot." "Then pray, my child. Sleep will come faster." She didn't take her eyes off me as I walked back inside. And only when I lay down did I realize that I hadn't even heard her open the door. It seemed to me that the house was awake, and that the letters were breathing along with it. The following week everything seemed calm, too calm. Nothing moved in Martha's house without her permission. Even the shadows from the curtains fell perfectly evenly, because she checked every morning to make sure the curtains hung the same. I already knew her rituals. Prayer at 7, breakfast at 7:30, room inspection at 9. Then church. She would return with a bag of postcards and prayer books, lay them out on the kitchen table, and call it preparing the soul for the evening. Ethan spent most of the day at work, at his uncle's workshop. I stayed with Mart. She never forbade me outright, but every sentence she uttered had a subtext. "Are you wearing lipstick again? Your lips are made for prayer. Your phone in the bedroom? Worldly conversations before bed cause restless dreams. Don't wear that dress. Short sleeves arouse lust, even if you don't notice it." I remained silent. If I objected, she would just quietly bow her head and say, "You are beautiful, Milo. Don't let the world spoil you." It sounded gentle, but each time it sounded more like a trap. One evening while I was doing laundry, Martha came into the laundry room with my phone in her hand. "He called." I answered. She said evenly, "Clara, I think. I told her you couldn't talk right now because you were resting your soul." "That's none of your business," I replied. "Everything that concerns my son is my business, and you are part of his life." She put down the phone and left as if nothing had happened. I stood there watching the washing machine spin, and felt myself being spun into her rules. That night I decided to talk to Ethan. When he came home I was waiting in the kitchen. "She reads our messages," I said. "She opens my letters." He rubbed his eyes, tired after work. "Milo, you're just stressed. She doesn't mean you any harm." "It's not concern," I replied. "She's testing us. If we start fighting, it will only get worse," he said. His calmness irritated me more than her control. At least she believed in what she was doing. He was just giving up. The next day I decided to check what she was hiding. When Martha went to church, I took the keys to her pantry. Inside were shelves, boxes, neat labels. In one box was a pile of envelopes, just like the ones I had seen in the attic. Some were already signed, some were blank. I opened one. A woman's path is in obedience. Salvation is born of obedience. At the bottom of the box was a stack of sheets with barely visible lines, like handwriting practice books. She had written these letters herself. I quickly put everything back in its place and froze. Martha was standing in the doorway. "What are you looking for?" "Salt," I said. "I thought there was some here." "The salt is in the kitchen. But it's good you came in. I wanted to show you something." She took out another box wrapped in cloth. Inside were old photographs. In one, little Ethan is standing next to a man in a suit. The man's face has been cut out. Only his hand on the boy's shoulder remains. "That's his father," she said. "God took him early. He sinned. He was tempted." She looked at me. "Women always bring temptation. That's why I have to be vigilant." I was silent. She smiled almost tenderly. "Don't worry. I know you're good. But evil isn't always foreign. Sometimes it lives in the hearts of those we love." She put the photo back and left. I stood there clenching my fists until I felt cold. And I realized that nothing happens by accident in this house. Even letters have an author. And he lives nearby behind the wall. That night I could hardly sleep. When I closed my eyes, I heard something slide under the door. An envelope. My name was on it. "Milo, don't lose faith. Your spiritual mother is always with you." I didn't open it. I just sat on the bed and stared at the door. And I knew. Someone was standing behind it. And breathing in the same rhythm that this house has been living in for many years. In the morning, Ethan left for work. And I remained in the silence that was becoming heavier with each passing day. In this house, even the sound seemed controlled. The doors opened quietly, the floor did not creak, and the clock ticked at the same rhythm as her footsteps. I put the kettle on to fill the space somehow. When steam rose above the stove, there was a knock at the door. "Milo, I'll be in a minute," Martha said and immediately opened the door. She was holding a new envelope in her hands. She placed it on the table as if it were nothing and sat down opposite me. "Don't be afraid," she said calmly. "I know it's hard for you to get used to. But this is my home. Everything has always been in a certain order here." "I don't want to change anything," I replied. "I know. But the devil works not through desire but through habit," she said quietly. "When people begin to doubt the rules, they open the door to evil." I was silent. She handed me an envelope. "This is a prayer for a new family. Read it before bed tonight." She left as always without a sound. I opened the letter. "Sin begins with disobedience. Doubt is the whisper of the enemy. Pray that your obedience may be pure." I crumpled the sheet and threw it in the trash. But then I took it back out, not out of fear but as proof. I hid it in my nightstand. After lunch, I decided to call Clara. Her number was still in my contacts, but the screen displayed an error message. "Connection not possible. Number blocked." I definitely hadn't blocked it. When I checked my settings, I realized that several contacts had appeared in the blocked list. All of my friends. And Martha's address was in my backup mail. She had access to my account without even asking. An hour later, she appeared with a tray of cookies. "You didn't come to morning prayer," she said. "I was waiting. I overslept. The soul doesn't sleep, Milo. It runs away from duty." She put down the cookies, then looked at the window. "Did you open the curtains?" "Yes, it was stuffy." "Don't do that. The neighbors can see what belongs only to our home." She looked me straight in the eye. Her gaze was firm and cold like an inspection. When Ethan came home that evening, I tried to speak calmly. "She treats us like children." He sighed. "Mila, she lost everything after her father. The church and order are all she has left. She's suffocating us." "You're exaggerating." His voice wasn't angry, just tired. He was used to it. And that hurt more than her control. The next day I received another letter, this time by email. The sender was Sistra Paturkovania Grace Baka Holy Hope. Org. The text was short, like an excerpt from a psalm. "Your heart has already begun to distance Ethan from God. Stop before it's too late." I immediately checked the email header and saw that the letter came from the same IP address as Martha's laptop. She didn't even try to hide it. In the evening I went to the kitchen. Martha was arranging jars of jam. "Did you write to me in the mail?" I asked. "In the mail?" She raised her eyebrows. "I don't use your technology. But God finds a way even through it," she smiled. I didn't say anything else. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn I went to Ethan. "I can't stay here," I said. "This isn't a home, it's a trap." He looked at me for a long time. "Give her time," he replied. "She'll calm down." "She won't calm down." He hugged me. His embrace was warm but empty, like the silence between us. After that, I didn't argue anymore. I just started watching more closely. I saw Martha rearranging our things, changing the towels, leaving the Bible open on different pages. And every night at exactly 10 o'clock, I heard her go out into the yard and check the mailbox. Once I went to the window. Martha was standing there in her robe, barefoot, with a candle and a letter in her hand. She put the envelope in the mailbox, crossed herself and whispered something as if praying. The next morning Ethan received a letter. His name was on the envelope. "Son, be vigilant. Your wife is leading you away from your faith. Don't let love become a tool of evil." I found this letter on the table while he was in the shower. I didn't know what was scarier, her words or the fact that he might believe them. That day I felt real fear for the first time. Not because of the supernatural, because of a person who believes they have the right to decide who is sinful. When I read that letter, my hands trembled not with anger, but with the realization that a line had been crossed. This was no longer interference, it was a distortion of reality, in which I was slowly being made the enemy. I put the envelope back as if I hadn't seen anything. Ethan returned with a towel over his shoulder, smiling, his usual self. He didn't know that I had already read his advice. "Did Mom send something again?" he asked, nodding at the letter. "Maybe," I replied. "I didn't open it." "She can be strange but not out of malice," he said. I just nodded. Her evil is rarely out of malice. Most often it speaks with her voice, gentle, confident, with references to faith. That day, for the first time, I wanted to run away. Not forever. Just for an hour to breathe without her shadow. I went to town under the pretext of shopping. Mrs. Grace, a former acquaintance of Martha's, was standing at the bus stop. "Oh, Milo," she said. "How are you doing living with her?" "Fine," I replied automatically. She was always devout. But after her husband died, the woman paused. She became too zealous. She wants to save everyone, even those who don't ask for it. Her words hung in the air. I wanted to ask more, but the bus arrived. I just drove away without a plan, without a destination. I ordered tea at a cafe near the market and felt alive for the first time in a week. 2 hours of silence. 2 hours without control. When I returned, Martha was already waiting. "Where were you?" she asked calmly. "In town." I told Ethan. "But you didn't tell me. In our family, it's not customary to hide your movements." She stood in the doorway, not raising her voice. "I don't have to report to you," I said. "You do," she replied. "Because as long as you're under this roof, you're part of us. And there are no secrets in a family." Her eyes remained soft, but inside they were steel. I walked past her and went up to my room. I leaned against the door. A church broadcast was playing downstairs. Her voice came through the walls. "All temptations have one face, gentle, feminine, smiling." The next morning I found a new letter in my coat pocket. "Don't let evil lead you by the hand. If doubt has settled in you, confess, before it's too late." I didn't remember anyone touching my clothes, but here the doors always opened silently. In the evening, Ethan said that Mom was worried because I was avoiding conversation. "She thinks you're angry with her," he explained. "Maybe you should talk to her?" What can I say? That she's meddling in our daily lives? Just be gentler. She takes everything too personally. Be gentler. It sounded like a sentence. Here, gentleness meant submission. When Ethan fell asleep, I heard footsteps again. Slow, cautious. They stopped at the door. Then a rustle. A white envelope slid under the door. I waited for the shadow to disappear and read. "I prayed for you, Milo. God showed me a sign. You must purify yourself. Tomorrow is confession. I've already made arrangements with the priest." I hid the letter under my pillow. In the morning when Ethan woke up, I said I wouldn't go. Martha stood at the door with the keys in her hand. "This is not a request," she said evenly. "It is a need of the soul. If you refuse, that's your choice. But choices always have consequences." Her eyes didn't blink. And then I saw for the first time that beneath this gentleness was not faith, but a fanatical conviction that she was speaking on behalf of God. I didn't go to church. And in the evening, Ethan said, "Mom was crying. She says you ruined her confession and now she's afraid for you." I looked at him and realized she had already rewritten our roles. He was the obedient son. I was the stranger who needed to be corrected. And she was the savior who did everything out of love. I didn't sleep that night, because I knew her next step would be bigger than a letter. And I would have to choose: leave on my own, or wait until they kicked me out in the name of order. At dawn, I was awakened by the smell of smoke. First, I thought the kitchen was on fire. I ran out into the hallway, and it was Martha burning incense. The smoke billowed down the stairs, hung in the air, and blocked the light. "It's a cleansing," she said calmly. "Yesterday was a difficult day. We must drive out everything that disturbs the peace." She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept all night. 3 candles were burning on the table, next to our wedding box. It was open, full of new letters. "What's this?" I asked. "Prayers," she replied. "For you and Ethan. I wrote them when I couldn't sleep." I moved closer. On the sheets of paper were familiar phrases. "The woman is responsible for temptation. The husband is the head. Doubt is a sin." Only now there was a strange signature under each one. "Father Harold, Sister Agnes, St. Anne's Parish." "You wrote this yourself," I said quietly. "The Lord guides my hand," she replied. I understood. For her, this was not deception. She truly believed she was doing the right thing. And that was the most dangerous part. After breakfast, Ethan went to the workshop and I stayed at home. Martha sat by the window with a Bible, whispering passages, tracing the lines with her finger. Then she said, "I want to show you something." She opened the door to a room I had never been in before. On the shelves were boxes labeled sin, purification, and atonement. On the table were envelopes, prayer books, and notebooks. "This is where I work," she said. "This is my mission." On the wall hung a large photograph of a young Ethan in a carved frame with a cross. Around it were dozens of notes with quotes. "He who lets go will lose. Love without obedience is chaos. A woman who does not obey destroys the home." "He was so pure," Martha said. "I promised God I would save his soul. And now it's your duty too." "My duty is to love him," I replied. "Not to live according to your fears." Her gaze turned cold. "Love without fear is temptation," she whispered. "You don't understand. You don't know what happened to his father." She paused for a moment, then spoke. "He was good but weak. A woman from church started writing to him. She said she needed advice. Then he left. And I started writing letters to save others. Because words have power. They can be used for good or for evil." She smiled. "My letters are medicine." "It's not medicine, Martha, it's a disease," I said. Her fingers clenched the edge of the table so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "You don't see evil," she replied. "It's gentle. In words and looks. And I see it in you." "In me." "In you," she said evenly. "You're like her. Like the woman who took my husband." She left, leaving me among the boxes. I stood there for a few minutes, then opened her notebook. Drafts of letters, the same phrases, the same warnings. Next to some of them were attempts to imitate other people's signatures, practice in handwriting. I photographed a few pages with my phone. I didn't know why, I just needed proof that it wasn't my imagination. In the evening, I showed the photos to Ethan. He stared at the screen for a long time, then looked away. "She just went too far," he said. "She needs help. She needs a doctor. And we need to leave." He didn't answer. When it got dark, I heard her walking down the hallway. Slowly, carefully. Then the quiet sound of the mailbox. I held my breath. And just as I was about to fall asleep, her voice came through the door, calm, confident. "God does not let go of those he has chosen." I lay there, staring into the darkness, thinking, Maybe she really believes she is saving us. Only we are running away from this salvation. The next morning everything looked normal. Too normal. Martha sang a church hymn, cooked porridge and arranged nuts in an even circle on a plate. Ethan was fixing something in the yard. And I stood by the window and watched the sun cut through the fog. This calm only made things worse. "Father Harold is coming to see us today," Martha said when we sat down at the table. "I invited him over for tea." "Why?" Ethan asked. "For a blessing. Anxiety has settled in this house. It needs to be cleansed." "Maybe we shouldn't," I said quietly. "It's personal." "Faith is never personal," she smiled. "God sees everything." Ethan looked at me briefly guiltily. "Mom, maybe another time." "No. We won't wait for the evil to grow stronger." After breakfast, I locked myself in my room. I knew she was standing behind the door. And indeed the handle barely moved. I opened my phone and looked at the photos of her notes again. Between the prayers were strange symbols, intertwined letters that looked like signatures. Next to some of them were phrases. Sin in the flesh. Purification through suffering. When Father Harold arrived, Martha greeted him like an old friend. She led him down the hallway, talking about unclean doubts and temptations that destroy the home. I stood on the stairs and listened as my home turned into her confessional. The priest was elderly with a gentle face. He shook my hand, and for a moment his gaze lingered. "We'll just pray," he said. "Together." But for Martha, together did not exist. She stood in the center holding a candle, dictating the words. "Lord, cleanse this house of temptation," she said, looking straight at me. "Of disobedience, of doubts that divide the family." Ethan lowered his head. I stood motionless. Father Harold suddenly changed his tone, calm even but firm. "Mrs. Martha," he said, "God teaches mercy, not fear. Love is not control." Martha froze. "You don't understand," she replied. "She can lead him away from the faith. I saw it in a dream." "Dreams are not always sent from heaven," the priest said quietly. "Sometimes they are sent by our own fears." She backed away. For the first time I saw panic in her eyes instead of authority. When the priest left, a deafening silence fell over the house. Ethan went out to see him off, and Martha sat down in an armchair. Her hands were shaking. "He doesn't understand," she whispered. "No one understands. They're all blind." "Martha," I said, "you need to rest." She looked up. "You're not Mila," she said calmly. "You have a different face." I froze. "What did you say?" "I saw you that night. You were standing by my bed. You had that woman's eyes." "I didn't go into your room." "Evil comes without permission," she whispered and laughed briefly. That evening, Ethan returned with a blank look on his face. "She says you were standing in her room," he said. "That you were. Watching her." "That's ridiculous. You know I was asleep." "I know," he replied. "But she doesn't seem like herself." He sat down next to me and lowered his head. "Maybe she really does need a doctor." "She needs boundaries," I said. "Otherwise, we'll lose everything." I didn't sleep that night. I heard her walking down the hall barefoot slowly. Then a soft knock on the door. "Milo," her voice was soft, almost gentle. I prayed. "And God showed me that tomorrow you will make a choice." Silence. "If you go against me, you go against him." She walked away, and the house fell silent again. I lay there with my phone in my hand and thought only one thing. Tomorrow I have to leave. Because if I stay, he won't let anyone else go. The morning began with silence. Not ordinary silence, but the kind that feels like something is wrong with the sound. No smell of coffee. No footsteps. No singing. The house was silent. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, leaning forward, holding a piece of paper in his hands. "What's that?" I asked. "A letter." She left it on the table. The handwriting was familiar, even neat. "If my son leaves me, the devil will win. If my wife does not accept the path of obedience, she will fall. Only through sacrifice can purity be restored. I must cleanse the house." "Where is she now?" I asked. "In the chapel." She said she was praying. We went down the stairs. The door to the chapel was ajar. Inside it smelled of wax and smoke. Martha was kneeling at the altar, holding a lit candle. Her lips moved silently. "Mom," Ethan said quietly. "What's that letter?" She didn't answer. She just turned her head. Her eyes were shining red and exhausted. "You don't understand," she whispered. "God told me to purify." "From whom?" I asked. "From you." Her voice was soft, almost gentle. And that's why it was scary. Ethan came over, took the candle and put it on the floor. "Enough, Mom. We're leaving." "No," she grabbed his arm. "If you leave, everything will fall apart. I lost your father, and I won't let you go too." Her fingers dug into his wrist. "Mom." He tried to speak calmly. "You need a doctor." "A doctor?" Her voice became sharp. "You want to turn me in as a traitor?" She let go of him and stepped back. She was breathing short, ragged breaths. "I wrote letters to teach you to listen. But you didn't hear me." "Mom, please. Now he'll take you away." She knocked the candle over sharply. The flame touched the tablecloth. Ethan rushed to put it out and I rushed to her. I grabbed her by the shoulders and tried to pull her away. She looked me straight in the eye. "You're not a wife, you're a temptation," she whispered. "It's not God, Martha. It's you." For a second, her gaze became empty. Then she cried out, jerked away and ran upstairs. We rushed after her. She stood on the stairs holding the box. "Here are my words," she said. "Here is the truth. And if you don't accept it, I'll take it where you won't find it." "Mom, don't. Just give it to me. You are my son. You belong to God, not to her." And then it all happened in a second. A step back, the edge of the step, the box fell from her hands, opened. The leaves like birds scattered in the air. Martha fell. Silence. "Mom." Ethan rushed to her. She was breathing. Her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. "God won't let go," she whispered. "He never lets go." The hospital said it was a nervous breakdown, possibly a psychotic episode. Ethan sat in the hallway, clutching her cross. I was nearby. We were both silent. The doctor came out. "She needs treatment. And you need distance. If she comes home now, it will happen again." We just nodded. In the evening, we returned home. Silence. The walls were black with soot. I gathered the burnt letters from the floor. One remained intact. "If evil goes away, God will give a sign." I went out onto the porch. The air was cold and clean like after a storm. And for the first time in a long time I breathed freely. But when I looked back, the light was on in her room. She was still in the hospital. But the light was still on. I stared at it for a long time. And I didn't know, was it electricity, habit? Or was someone still watching over the house to make sure everything was in order? That night I didn't even try to sleep. I sat by the window and looked at the house across the street. At the part where Martha's room was. The light was on there. Constantly. Martha had been in the hospital for 3 days. And yet, the lamp in the window turned on every night at exactly 10 o'clock. At first, I thought it was a ghost of habit. Then I noticed that Ethan himself was checking that light every night. "Maybe we should turn it off?" I asked. "No," he replied. "There's an old timer there. She always set it so that the lamp would shine even when we weren't there. She used to say, 'The house must not be left in darkness.'" His voice was calm but tired. He spoke as if it were something sacred that must not be touched. After midnight, I went there anyway. The door was ajar. On the desk was an open Bible, a sheet of paper, and a pen. On the sheet were a few words written in her handwriting. "The trial is not over. The house has a memory." Next to it was an old ink stain dried up. The letter had clearly been written earlier but left open on the table. I stood there, feeling a chill. Not a mystical one, but the kind that comes when there are too many memories in a house. Ethan followed me in. "I heard you get up." He glanced at the sheet of paper. "She left this a long time ago. Remember? She kept everything she wrote." I nodded. He turned off the lamp. The next day, Ethan went to the hospital. He came back late looking pale. "She's not talking," he said. "But she gave me this." In his hand was a key on a string. Small, with a tag on which was neatly written, "My house is not abandoned. The doctor said she asked me to give this to you." She remembers? Yes. And she said, the house must be looked after. We were silent. I didn't know what to say. That night, I insisted that we had to leave. At least for a few days far away from this place. He agreed but wanted to take a few things with him. We split up. He went to the attic, I went to the kitchen. In the pantry among the jars there was a new box. Dust-free with a label. Mila. I opened it. Inside were printed sheets. Not handwritten but computer text. Mila forgot her duty. She turned her son away from his mother. She must be corrected. There was a flash drive among the papers. I inserted it into my laptop. On the screen were several audio files. I clicked on the first one. Voices came out from under the noise. Mine and hers. Me? I can't live here. She controls me. She said, see, Ethan? She said it herself. She's not your wife. She's a temptation. I froze. The recording was made in our kitchen back when I thought we were just talking. When Ethan came downstairs, I showed him the laptop. She was recording us. For a long time. He listened as snippets of our conversations played on the screen, snippets taken out of context, edited into a story where I was to blame for everything. It's like those old tape recorders, he whispered. She had one at church. We sat in silence. In each recording, she twisted our words to prove her point. She was preparing, I said. It was all planned. We're leaving today, he replied. Without our things. Without anything. We left the house without looking back. Ethan gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his fingers turned white. In the rearview mirror I could see the house, the windows dark except for one, the same one. The timer went off at exactly 10 o'clock. The lamp lit up again. And I thought, maybe the memory of a house is just the habits of people who don't know how to let go. We drove out of town in silence. The wheels hummed evenly, as if the car was driving itself, and we were just trying to catch up with the silence we had long lost. Ethan stared at the road, his jaw clenched. Where to now? I asked. To the hotel by the lake. It's quiet there. The room smelled of laundry detergent and sterility. I fell onto the bed and felt like I could breathe, but I wasn't calm, just tired. Ethan sat by the window, staring at his phone. I told the hospital that Mom is under supervision, but he fell silent. She called me. How is that possible? She says they let her use the phone. She sounded calm. She asked me to come back. He showed me the screen. A short message. Your home is waiting. God does not leave altars unfinished. I felt something tighten in my chest. Don't reply. She'll find a way anyway, he said quietly. He turned off his phone and put it on the table. We were silent. The silence in the room was different. Not like in a house where everything is listening. This silence was just waiting. I tried to sleep, but woke up to the sound of a message. The screen was lit up again. New contact, Margaret Gale, his mother's full name. If you believe you will return. I have left a new beginning for you. Attached to the message was a photo of our house. The door was open. On the porch was a new wooden chest. The same shape, only bigger. My initials were on it. She knows where we are, I said. Ethan just nodded. She could have found out from the bank card statement. The hotel is in her name. We both fell silent. The reality was simpler than it seemed. She just wouldn't let go of control. Even from the hospital. The next day we decided to move on to another city, another hotel. I deleted all my accounts, changed my email, phone number, even my last name on the reservation. I wanted a clean slate. But when I opened the door in the morning, there was an envelope on the floor. White without a stamp. Inside was a printed text. There is no such thing as a clean slate if someone remembers the words. I felt my hands tremble. This time the envelope did not have familiar handwriting on it. Maybe it was one of her friends from church. Maybe she asked them to keep an eye on things. I burned the letter in the bathroom. The paper burned quietly without smoke. When the black spot touched the white sink, I realized that even if we ran away, her control would not end. It would just change form. There was a woman in a white scarf at the reception desk. I noticed her looking at us. Her name tag said Grace. The same name that had once been written on one of the letters. She smiled warmly, but I couldn't smile back. We got in the car. Ethan started the engine without looking at me. "I'll change the number," he said. "And we'll find another place. No addresses, no traces." We drove on in silence. The road stretched endlessly, and I felt that we were not yet free, just on the road between her past and our future. I was no longer afraid that she would show up at night or send a letter. I was afraid of something else, that even without her, Ethan would continue to live according to her schedule, and that one day he would say her phrase to me again. Everything must be right. And then I realized by running away from her, I had to learn not to run away from myself.